All right. All right. Hope you guys can all hear me well. Okay, so first and foremost, a very good morning to all of you, and thank you very much for joining us today at our webinar session, The Why and How is Data Management the Foundation towards Smart Industry? All right, yep, so we hope everyone is doing well and staying safe in this current period of MCO 3.0 and also the pandemic period, and hopefully we'll be all getting through this as soon as possible. All right, well, so let me just start by introducing myself. I am JJ, the marketing manager here at CADVision Systems, and I will be your moderator for today. So joining us today, we have Mr. Wong Kiat Zi. All right, so he is actually stationed in Singapore, and he is one of our technical directors in CADVision Systems. All right, so he is also a certified Smart Industry Readiness Index Assessor, or in short, SIRI. But some of you may not be very familiar with the term SIRI, right? But you will be hearing this term throughout the entire presentation later, or the session later on. But it is actually essentially the same thing as what we know here in Malaysia as the Industry Forward Readiness Index, okay, in Malaysia, and it shares the same framework and the same methodology. But without taking too much time with the introduction, let's welcome Kiat. Yep. Yeah, Kiat, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
All right. Yep. Yeah.
Hi,
So,
JJ. Hi, everybody.
yep. Hi. So I'll just pass it over to you.
Okay, let me share my screen. Good morning, everybody. I hope you can see my screen. May take a while to come up. Can you see it now, everybody? Okay.
Yep. Got it.
Okay. All right. Good morning, everybody, and thank you very much for taking time to share to be with us here this morning. I have been tasked to expand on this notion of why and how data management is the foundation towards smart industry. So today I'm going to be covering this topic in about 3 parts. Right. One is I'll be talking about the context, which is smart industry. As JJ had pointed out, since we are saying that data management is the foundation to having a smart industry or a company that is ready for the future in smart industry, in smart manufacturing. So we need to understand the context. So I'll be doing a bit of the framework. And then after that, I'll be going through the how of it. Right? First the why, then the how. Then I will be sharing a little bit more about the details, what it's like, give you a sneak peek of what it's going to be like to adopt some of these best practices, processes, and systems. Okay, so let's get started. Okay, the why of why data management is the foundation to a smart industry. So let's look at the SIRI, the Smart Industry Readiness Index. Okay, now just a quick word on the Smart Industry Readiness Index. It is, yes, as JJ pointed out, it is the framework. It's an I4.0 framework that was developed by a group of countries, but led by Singapore initially. But of course, it is now adopted also in the World Economic Forum as a global standard. So yes, it is actually very similar to what you probably already know in the industry forward. So the framework is actually quite universal and similar. What I'm going to do is just to go through some of the key principles. I won't be going through the entire framework because that's not what we've allocated time for. So the first thing to note is the design principles. Now you will notice that these principles should be common themes across most frameworks, right? I4.0 frameworks. First thing is interoperability. Interoperability speaks of the machines, humans, and computer systems being able to connect and communicate with each other throughout the network or the internet. Right. So what it implies is that you are able to share data sort of openly, um, uh, uh, even if you're using different applications or different systems or different controllers, different equipment. Right. So we need to achieve that interoperability. Second thing is we need to achieve virtualization. Now, the first step to virtualization, of course, is digitalization. So everybody has heard of AR, VR, and all that. But the whole idea is to be able to model whether your product or your plant, your production, at the digital level so that you can track what is going on every step of the way. Right. So that's virtualization. The third point is decentralization. Decentralization speaks of all your systems or all your functions within an organization being able to make decisions and using optimized parameters independently. Now, again, as you can probably already imply, data management is crucial here. If you don't have the right data, how are you going to make optimized decisions? And the whole concept of decentralization is that you're no longer operating in a command and control manner, but rather in cells. So each business function or cells are able to make their optimized decisions in the best interest of the overall company. So how do you achieve that? Again, you need to have visibility, transparency, accuracy, integrity of data, and all that. Okay, fourthly, we talk about real-time capabilities, right? Any flexible, agile company, any I 4.0 company needs to have, to a certain degree, real-time capabilities, real-time access to their data. Fifth, service orientation. With all this information, with all these capabilities that you now have through the convergence of all these technologies, you can now create new services. And again, I think in some industries it becomes immediately obvious. For example, you no longer carry inventory. You let your customers 3D print your spare parts, but you sell the design, for example. That becomes a maintenance service. Lastly is the concept of modularity. Modularity is about your production systems being able to respond very quickly, like reconfigured, right? So that you can handle all kinds of productions, different types of production, whether it is high volume or high mix, low volume customization, as we call it, right? So yeah, you need to have that capability and flexibility to create that modularity. So these are the 6 design principles that are critical to the success of any I 4.0 company or framework. So keep this in mind, keep all these design principles in mind, because as we talk about data management, you will certainly see the correlation and why data management is the foundation to achieving some of these key principles. Now, still on the framework, first we need to understand the business process, right? Within the framework of I 4.0, we have to look at a couple of things. Within Siri, we talk about 3 things: the organization, the technology that you use, and the processes. So let's begin with just the business processes. Every company has its own internal, or what we call the vertical operation, which has to do with the company first getting business, doing the sales, right? Doing the planning, the material purchase and all that, and then doing the production, right? So you have to carry out some form of production or some form of manufacturing in this environment. Yeah. Then secondly, you have to interact with your suppliers and your customers. That's your horizontal supply chain or horizontal process, business process. And then lastly, you have what's called the integrated product lifecycle. Now, whether you are a supplier or a customer, you are touching some kind of a product. Now, of course, we're not referring to purely service companies now, but even service companies along the way may touch products, may deal with products. So there's always this thing about how you handle products or IP or design in a company. So in any company, or particularly manufacturing companies, we assume that there are always these three processes that are taking place, right? Now, as you can probably see, these processes generate a lot of data. Yeah. So the first thing to note is that data is being generated and used throughout these three business processes. But as we all know, if you're in IT long enough or in systems engineering, we've all heard of garbage in, garbage out. So if you generate the wrong data or you don't use the data correctly, if you are not taking that information into account in a timely manner, for example, data can become expired, useless. They can go from good to bad over time. So garbage in, garbage out is something that we've got to take note of and be very conscious of as we deal with data, as we manage the data along the way in this entire business process. So just now I mentioned that there are three elements of three blocks, we call it, of any I 4.0 framework. There is process, technology, and organization at the bare minimum, right? Then you can expand on these processes, as I mentioned, in process or supply chain and product lifecycle. Technology, we ask ourselves, that with the technology that you use, how intelligent is your technology, how connected is your technology, and how automated is your technology. Then with organization, we look at the structure and the management, as well as the talent readiness of the organization. Okay, so very quickly, you can see the expansion based on the 8 pillars that I just described here into 16 dimensions. Now, I won't be going into all these 16 dimensions. Today, I just want to take integrated product lifecycle as an example of how you handle data within an I4.0 framework. Okay? Right. So let's delve into integrated product lifecycle. What does it look like in an I 4.0 environment? Now, if you are in what I call the 3.0 business, you would have been very familiar with the process of design, engineering, and then handing over to manufacturing. And typically, once you have handed over your design to manufacturing, you probably would have said, okay, my job is done. Now, but in I 4.0, the scope has expanded to beyond just manufacturing, but you have to care about your design and how it influences customer use, how it's being maintained, and how it is being disposed. Disposal here doesn't just mean throwing away. Disposal here can refer to reuse and recycle, right? Okay, so if we look at this particular dimension, as I mentioned, right, just now there are 16 dimensions. Now, each dimension, we score them in terms of maturity. So from 0 means it's undefined, means your product life cycle is undefined, it's kind of happening haphazardly, all the way to it's a very intelligent process, right? And in between, you've got defined, is your process digitalized? If it is digitalized, is your integrated product lifecycle integrated, right? And then finally, if it's integrated, is it automated? And then ultimately, if it's automated, how about is it intelligent enough to cater to all these different requirements from the consumers or from your customers? So each band represents an increased level of maturity within your product lifecycle management function. Yeah, we don't have enough time to go through the specific definitions, but I can just take, let's say, the third one, where if your product lifecycle is integrated, what does that mean? Here it says that this is actually the definition, right? That the digital tools and systems that manage your product lifecycle are formally linked with each other. However, the exchange of information along the product lifecycle is predominantly managed by humans. Example, ERP, CRM, and your PLM linked by humans. But humans trigger the execution. So what this means is that, let's say, for some of you, you may already be using SolidWorks to do your design. So SolidWorks is a CAD tool. It is digitalized. You are designing in 3D. All your parametric information, your PMI data, all those things are captured and can be shared with other people, other functions, other groups. So you are digital, actually. By that definition, you are digital, number 2 here, right? But if your digital tools are linked together, let's say your 3D design can now be shared in with your your electrical and engineering electronics team, and they can take your 3D design, your mechanical design, and then import them into their own whatever applications or systems they are using, and then manipulate the data there. Now, if they can do it that way, that means you are integrated, provided you can send that information via your system, not by email. If you're sending it by email, you're not considered integrated. All right, that's what it means here. And later on, I will show you the implication and the significance, why we say it is, like that. Sending it by email, obviously, you can get lost and all that. So there are some issues. But again, this level here talks about using the right tools, the right systems to manage your data and enabling your data to be shared across different platforms. So here we can, if you remember what I talked about earlier, the design principles, the first design principle is interoperability. This is where we look for the interoperability of the data. Then subsequently, you get automated, because once you're integrated, obviously you can then automate certain workflows and all that. And then finally, you can create some intelligence and then even build some intelligence into your product development lifecycle. For example, the use of digital twins is a typical one that people talk about today. Okay, let's move on. Now, why is product data management critical? Take a look at this picture for a while. I think it speaks for itself. Let me go through a little bit about the background of this. Okay, this research is primarily done by, actually it's done by a couple of organizations, but the company that was attributed this originally was Ford Motor Company. This is looking at the importance of data or product design in terms of cost, which is, if you look at the picture here, 5% for product design, it costs 50% for you to get your raw material. But in terms of the overall influence to the business, to the health of the business, to the future of the business, it actually has a much higher influence, even though the cost is low, right? So this is the reason why data management, or at least it provides you a context to understand why data management is important and needs to be looked at very carefully. Yeah, because the impact to your future, to your business operation, to the revenue, to the health of the overall company can be much more than the 5% that you spend on product development. All right. Okay. So before we look at how we can, the how, right, which is how we can adopt the data management, a proper data management system, I wanted to just go into a bit about the challenges faced today, which is still very common these days. Yeah, challenges in one of the biggest challenge in managing product data is the non-standardized product development process and the data that is being generated through your product development process, right? So I'm sure some of you or many of you may be actually familiar with some of these symptoms. So through the next few slides, I'm going to be showing you, talking about the challenges and then the symptoms that you typically face. Hopefully you can relate to some of these, right? You may have heard that customers cannot read my product data, or you may have that some of your colleagues can't find their design, their other colleagues' design. So these are all very typical. The root cause is, well, mishandling and all that is one thing, but one of the root causes is the non-standardized process that is being adopted and the data platform that is being used. Thirdly, I can't find which other models use the same component, same thing. I come across it until today. I still meet a lot of customers that tell me that they can't find which models this component is being used in, because they have over the years developed so many different product series. Fourthly, a lot of file conversion required for product data to be usable in marketing, in engineering, production. Now, this is talking about within your company, you have to share data with other people. Again, either you have to do a lot of conversion or you do like a lot of explanation. Some of my people that I have come across have even had to they do the design in say SolidWorks, but they have to use PowerPoint to create the drawing and explain it to other departments. Take a long time to find the right replacement part. Now, this is also very common. As consumers, we all may have, you guys may have experienced it. I certainly have. When you try to look for, say, the replacement part for your window panel handle that broke down, you can't find the replacement part, for example. So this is one of the major root cause. The second one is the inability to share and use product data within the company. So just now I alluded to that. Of course, one of the major root causes is the non-standardized process. But the other thing is now we're talking about different systems, different approaches being used, right? And just to give you a quick example, this is a research done, I believe, in the US. It's correlated to branding, which means consumer level. But from industry, you may be producing industrial tools that are being used to produce consumer products, for example. On average, more than 1,000 SKUs are generated per year, and per industry, per company, right? So, so you can imagine for some companies, it's a few thousand SKUs. 700 attributes are being managed today per SKU. So again, like I said, data is being generated. 700 characteristics of property elements of one SKU have to be managed, have to be handled throughout the entire life cycle. 500 formats to support different retail partners globally. On average, 4 weeks to prepare the attributes for a new SKU, 4 weeks, right? And 3 to 5 people per market that is being dedicated to aggregate product data. So as you can see, these are just examples, very high level research done by McKinsey. Challenges faced in sharing and using product data. So symptoms you may find is, I can't find the part my colleague, this ex-colleague designed because he left already. Where is this component used? I alluded to that earlier. My EE colleague can only read my step files, so I have to keep converting them. That's already quite good, if you can convert the step files. Some of them actually have to go through a lot of a big round to actually get the data across. My colleague sent me the wrong version of this part. Also happens. I lost the email that contained the latest design. So, so these are typical symptoms that result from the inability to share and use your product data within the company. Why? Because don't have the right systems, don't have the right process, etc., etc. Lastly, our partner numbering system is very confusing. I've also come across this quite commonly with companies that don't have standardized part numbering system, a serial management system, and all that. Yeah, this is one of the key problems of finding the right parts. Then, thirdly, the inability to share the data within your ecosystem. That means outside of your company, but within the ecosystem, you have to deal with your partners, customers, service providers, etc. So some symptoms, I have to convert my design so that my customers can read them, very common. I have to pay more for my equipment because they need to customize their system to read and use my designs. This happens quite a lot if you are using a specialized equipment, but even standard equipment, these days they do charge for extra things like this. We had to remanufacture this part because we read the design data wrongly. Again, manual intervention and manual error. The standards body did not recognize our design files, so our certification has to be delayed. Same thing, certification bodies are concerned with certifying products according to the industry standards. They are not in the business of reading your files. But a lot of times I do have customers who are, say, manufacturing medical equipment who need to certify their equipment. Their designs may not be readable to the certification body. So things like this. My files were too big to send by email, very, very common. Not surprisingly, a lot of people still send their files via email these days. And then lastly, there's a huge concern with security and protection of IP. So if you take a quick look here in this diagram, this is a research done in the US. Number one cause of data breaches is data theft, right? That's why people are so concerned about their IP and the security of their IP. $386 billion estimated spent on securing PCs between 2015 and 2020. 91% of attacks on companies in the manufacturing industries came from outsiders. So of course, if you're dealing with customers, you're dealing with suppliers, everybody is concerned about security. Like one of the symptoms, my customer insists on us paying for access to their system. I don't know how many of you have that, but I certainly have come across companies who are supplying to say multinationals. They do have to pay a certain fee so that they can, in order to do business with a multinational company, you need to use their system. You've got to pay for it. My equipment supplier charges me more to access their proprietary data. This applies to if you're buying equipment that are already quite automated. They have their own controllers. Their controllers may be proprietary, and even if it's standard controller, they may not necessarily open up their information for you to read easily. Why? Because they are also concerned about the security of their machine. They don't want the wrong people to access it. And of course, these days also due to cybersecurity, if the equipment is connected to the internet, it is subject to hacking by outsiders. So all these things increase your cost. You need to pay for security to protect your data or someone else, your customers or your suppliers' data. Then, of course, ultimately, occasionally, some of us get hacked, and some of my designs were corrupted, and I have to redesign. Happens. My ex-colleagues stole some of my designs. Also have come across, unhappy employees and all that may do certain things. So security is actually a very critical aspect of managing your product data. So with that, what I have done so far is just to give you a bit of a context and understanding of where the industry currently is with respect to managing and using data within their company, specifically in the product lifecycle data management. Now let's move on to the how. Adopting a product data management system requires us to, as I said, overcome some of the challenges that I shared earlier, right? I may not have enough time to go through the step-by-step of the how to adopt or how to implement. This is not the session for it. In the next session, we will be sharing more details. But for now, I will just be pointing out how data management forms the foundation to leading edge I4.0 company. Okay, so let's start with how are we going to adopt an integrated product lifecycle management. Now, as I said earlier, this is the diagram I showed you, right? About the integrated product lifecycle. Let's look at the key characteristics first. Okay, once you have implemented a product lifecycle like this, if you adopt something like this, right, what it means is that, or what it implies is that you need to make sure that you are integrated between and among all these different functions, right? These are just examples of the functions. So the implication here is that you will have done some integration, you would have adopted some form of digital tools, but most importantly, you would have adopted a standardized process or a more or less automated process. What I mean by process is, for example, if you are designing a new product, there is a standard process for you to go through it already, whether it is for approval, for verification, for validation, for testing, prototyping. All those processes are automated or standardized. Yeah. Why I say automated is because if you're using certain tools or certain process, then you could already automate it, as I pointed out. So if you have already done those things, then you'll be able to enjoy some of these benefits, right? Digitalization and integration is done. You will be able to improve productivity, as you can imagine. Not only that, you have change history, tracking step by step what happened because you have the right process. Even if you do it manually, there is a process to do it. There's a track record of it. There's a paper trail of it as well. And then, of course, you would have reduced costs. But here, let's assume if you are already adopting a system, you would be able to enjoy the reduction of cost in multiple dimensions. Productivity improvement already will give you cost reduction. Material usage, optimized material usage, cost reduction. If you have standard process in managing your data, your testing can be reduced by, say, using simulation and all that. You also would have reduced cost. In manufacturing, if you have design, your design data can be easily shared at the right time to manufacturing. The design for manufacturing, the DFM part, can also be improved. And so you would also enjoy cost reduction overall at the company level. So there are many dimensions of cost reduction that you can enjoy here. And then next is the design flexibility, right? If you have implemented, adopted standard product development life cycles, you will actually be able to create more flexibility, believe it or not, right? It may sound like rigid and all that, but your ability to respond to different types of design requirements is actually enhanced. So what that does is it enables you to have greater personalization and customization of your product. Lastly, you improve customer satisfaction. We all exist as a manufacturing company or a product company to ensure that our product, when used by the customer, serviced by us, and disposed by even our agents and all that, all your ecosystem partners and ultimately customers are happy and satisfied with the experience, right? So these are some of the, or just a very high level benefits that you enjoy. Now, how does your product management interact with other functions? That's the key question here, right? We are talking about product development lifecycle here specifically. How do you interact with sales, with marketing, with engineering and manufacturing today? I'm sure today, those of you who are in this business already know what you are doing and how you're doing it. You know what I'm referring to. You may be facing certain challenges. You may be having a very matured system that works very well today. But what I wanted to do is just to give you a quick idea of how this column here, the product data management column, as well as your CAD/CAM, this is all related to your product management, right? How this interacts with the rest of the functions, including your customer. This is just to give you a view of how it should be applied. Right now, I have to take a particular industry, and in this case, I choose a precision engineering business. Right? Precision engineering business is about taking a product, a customer giving you a specific 3D design, and then seeing whether you have the ability to cut it. They will get you to quote. It's usually a specific customized design, whether and it has to be fabricated in metal or plastics or certain type of material. But essentially, it is using some machining, right, to produce this particular 3D model part. So let's start with the highest level process where we look at, say, the customer send an RFQ. When they send an RFQ, of course, they send it over to sales, and then the sales will get the engineering team to do the design, right? So they will do the design. They will evaluate whether they can cut apart what material, what tools they need, what fixtures, what equipment they need, what processes and all that they need to use. Do they have the right software to cut it, the right code and all that? So that is all done upfront. If okay, the design is finally approved, then it goes to sales to do the quotation. So sales will send a quotation for review by the customer. If they like your quotation, they send you a PO. Now, this is where things start for the engineering team, right? Once the PO is received, the sales will then issue a sales order, make sure that the product team or the engineering team is able to produce this part. So at this point, the engineering manager will need to take a look okay, now we previously we quoted based on some of these assumptions. Have any of these assumptions changed? If yes, they have to maybe modify, right? If no, then they can approve this design and send it for material planning to be issued a production order, which then will be planned into by their production team. I take a look here at the headers here. I use systems name like ERP and MES to represent production for MES. ERP, I just say sales as a function, right? So why I use the system names here, because we assume that these processes can be and probably are being managed by the systems. Yeah. So next, take note that the customer is now out. So I removed the customer column to the left. Now we come to the point when production is ready to start, right? Earlier we talked about planning. So the planning is done. It may take days or weeks before the production actually start. Now, before the production start again, we need to look through the design again, see whether anything has changed, because in between, customers may come back and change certain things. So you need to look at it again, release and approve the design before the production. So pre-production will be done by the production team. And these additional two columns here refer to integrated systems like SCADA, PLCs, and your ultimate, your end equipment or your production hardware. It can be your CNC machine, your CMM, or whatever, right? In a precision business. So all these things are assumed to be automated. I won't spend too much time on this, but basically, once production starts, they run, hopefully in an automated way. Then when production ends, production report will be sent back to the engineering team for record, for analysis. Did we cut this the right way? Is this the best way to cut? Is there a better way to fabricate this part? And then you ship an invoice. Okay, so this is just to give you a quick view of how the interaction would take place and the significance of adopting a standard flow throughout your business process. Again, going back to the framework earlier, this is actually the vertical process, right? If you remember that pyramid that I talked about earlier. So this is how your function, the data management function, interacts with the rest of the business function within the company. Now, if I zoom in a little bit more, I think that just the 4 boxes that I showed earlier, you can then zoom in and see that, yeah, within the approval process, the engineering process, these are some of the examples. If you were to adopt a system, of course, for CADVision, we adopt SolidWorks PDM. If you are already using SolidWorks and PDM, then obviously they are interoperable, data can be shared and all that. But what you see here is that the data can be used, read, and the workflow can be automated. And because that same 3D design can be used everywhere along this cycle, you are now able to integrate your all these different functions in a digital manner, right? First you digitalize because you use the digital tool, then after that you integrate them through some of these workflows. Okay, I won't go into too much of this here. Again, there will be, I think, another session where we will go deeper into this for you to take a look at how the system works, right? So, in a nutshell, what I've covered so far is the why, right? Some of the problems or challenges being faced, and then what it looks like if you were to adopt something like this. So to summarize, if you were to adopt an integrated PDM platform within an I4.0 framework, right, these would be some of the key benefits that you will enjoy, you will have. And these, in fact, I think using the word enjoy may not be very accurate, but it is a capability that you will have, right? Capability in terms of powerful search tools to review and reuse your parts. So remember just now I said, some of the symptoms is I can't find my colleagues' design somewhere. Well, if you have a management system that helps you to automatically keep track of the different versions and the different design, different projects within your company, you will be you'll be able to search very quickly. And in fact, you can even search by parametric attributes, for example. Then you have a powerful automated workflow system. So just like I mentioned, you digitalize, then you integrate, then you automate. This takes you to some capability of automation. I won't say full automation, but you certainly have a good deal of automation here. You can easily add more users even for your customers and your suppliers. Here you can invite your suppliers and your customers. It actually makes you look quite organized. It gives people the confidence. Your customers can actually access your design over the web in a secured manner, and they can actually approve your design via the web in a secured manner. This gives everybody full confidence, that my data is secure, my IP is secure. Then next is a very important point, compliance. Because you have the capability to track, manage, audit the entire process of your product development lifecycle, you capture all the data from design, engineering data, even test data, manufacturing data. You can capture everything within the same environment, and that allows you to get standardized, allows your product to be certified a lot more easily because all the track record is there. I touched on security already. You can easily also add work locations. So for those of you who have multiple product development centers, whether in Malaysia, Singapore, China, Indonesia, Vietnam, around the region globally, you can scale your system easily. And then finally, the automated version control and managing of your data. So because you have all these capabilities within the SIRI framework that I used earlier, you now enjoy band 3 at the minimum. And I'm being conservative because it differs case to case. When I do assessment with companies, some end up with 3, some end up with 4. But at the very least, you achieve a level 3, right? Now, this is just to give you another quick view of what happens if you were to adopt your product data management as the foundation. So just now we talked about in our title, we said the how and why, the why and how data management is the foundation to smart industry. Why data management is a foundation? Because when you have standardized data, when you have interoperable data, when you have reusable data and secure data, you enable yourself to automate a lot of things. And in this case, you can even automate your design. When I say design, I'm talking about your 3D design, right? This is a very good example of a product that you can add on to your product data management system that allows you to not have to even do the drawing anymore. You come up with the whole concept is that you come up with a base drawing, say in this case is your door panel. Come up with a base drawing, and then you configure that by inputting parameters to the door, you then create automatically the 3D model in SolidWorks. So it generates automatically for you. Now, that is a very powerful capability. Most customers that I speak to, once they hear about something like this, especially for those companies that have a challenge or problems with finding people to do the drawing, because you're dealing with tons and tons of drawing, because you have multiple series, multiple sizes, configurations and all that, and every time you have to do a new configuration, you have to pack and go, you have to copy and paste the same model and then redraw it and all that. Very tedious. This is something that you can automate. Take a look at this video. Yeah, so this is taking the example of a door frame. So the interesting part about this is that you can actually have this interface look something like this and actually let your customer configure it themselves. Once you have configured everything, you can actually code them again online without even having to redo the drawing. It's all done automatically. In this case, it's showing you how you can configure the frame profile. You can change the number of windows if you want. dynamic form control based on the rules. So you have a set of design rules that govern the design of this door. Change color, of course, right? And once it's all done, select the quantity. And as I said, you can immediately quote. Some of our customers actually have this on their website where the customers can now quote, or our customer can now quote their customer online. Okay, so last point I want to make. This is what it boils down to. So after what we have shared, right, everything about the data management as a foundation to smart industry. I've talked about the why and the how. Ultimately, you want to achieve this for what purpose? Why do we adopt IE 4.0 in the first place? Because the answer is very straightforward. For most companies, it is to enable them to become agile and responsive in today's highly competitive market. As you all know, things are, new versions, new models come up very quickly. Consumers' behaviors and patterns change very quickly, and as a result, even if you're in industrial products, the requirements change as well. So this is the reason. Agility is what people are looking for, right? Eventually. So this is a research I want to share with you done in Germany and Europe, of a typical company, right? This dot here represents an event happening within this axis of time, and the y-axis shows the value or the benefit of adoption. What we mean here is that when an event happens, for example, it can be an accident happened, a line breakdown, product failed, etc. Right? It's an event. When that event happens, if you can respond very quickly, then the value of your response is high here. If you can respond at this time, then your value is good. It's very high. Your customer walks away happy, immediately resolve the problem. Now, if you can't respond, you may take time. As you take time, your value drops, right? So you may take time to gather some information about the events, then do some analysis. Throughout all these stages, time passes. And then you come out with a countermeasure, and then finally you make a decision, implement the countermeasure. Countermeasure is approved, countermeasure takes effect. So as a result, time passes, the value drops, right? So what do we mean by agility? Agility is the ability to implement changes in the company within real time, including fundamental systemic changes to the company's business model, right? So this is what we mean by agility. An event that takes place can be a short-term event or it can be a long-term event, right? In some cases, companies that I've met and done assessment for, the event is the CEO saying that, hey, within 2 years, I want to be listed, or within 2 years, I want to be the top vendor within this particular industry. So that is something that happens within the company, and the whole team must respond. And how long do they take to respond can be mapped out by this graph. And the key here is the ability to respond very quickly, not only quickly, but in an integrated manner, meaning all the functions know what to do and how to respond very quickly when something happens. The IE 4.0 capabilities enable companies to reduce the time between an event occurring and the implementation of an appropriate response, as I mentioned earlier. So this is what it boils down to. Ultimately, when you adopt something like a product data management system, what you're looking for is this. You are hoping to push all your these different stages, squeeze them back in time so that you can respond much quicker, right, in a higher value at an increased value. And the way you achieve this is by adopting some of these technologies. So one of them, as I mentioned, as a foundation, is integrated product data management system in real time. right? And with that, I end my presentation. Thank you very much.
Yep. All right. Yep. Thank you so much, Kiet. It really sheds a light and also provides more clarity and also perspective, put things into perspective for of how data management and its importance in the overall design process, right? I particularly really enjoy the part where you showed the image comparing the percentage of influence on the total cost. Yeah, how the investment was like 5%, but the influence of it was like 70%. Yeah, I think it really puts things into perspective for us. All right. Yeah. Yeah. So we've seen the why and how of how data management is the foundation for Industry 4.0. But now, um, let us show you a more comprehensive and a more detailed guide on how product data management, or specifically in our case, how SolidWorks product data management can be implemented into your process. And our follow-up webinar. So if you have a look at our screen right here, we will be holding a follow-up webinar to talk to you about the step-by-step guide to upgrade your data management process next week on the 27th of May. 2021, so which is actually next Thursday. Yeah, so this time it will be in the afternoon, and we are currently only opening up the registration priority for those of you here with us today. Yeah, so what you can do is you can head over to, you can just scan the QR code right here. If not, you can also head over to the chat, right? We have put it into the chat as well. We have a link over there. So what you can do is you can also take this opportunity to register for yourself or for your colleague even. All right, yeah. So seats are limited for this particular webinar. So yeah, we hope to see you there. Right. So before we end today's session, we are actually going to hold a short Q&A session as well. Yeah, for some questions that you guys might have. So if you guys do have any questions, what you can do is you can head over to the questions tab and you can just key in your question over there. Yeah, and we'll be glad to answer. All right. Yep. So don't have to be shy. If you have any questions, you can just ask us. Anyone have anything? Right, just giving a few more seconds. Do we have any questions from the floor? Okay. I think we have a question right here. All right. Yeah. So the question is, how do I know if I require a life cycle management or a data management system? All right. Yeah. Kiet, are you with us?
Yep, I'm here.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah.
How do you tell? Well, actually, product data management is very generic. I think at the very minimum, if your business activity touches any form of product data, then obviously at the very bare minimum, you need to have a product data management system. A life cycle management, of course, is broader by definition. it tracks the entire life cycle of that product all the way to, as I showed you earlier, the disposal or the reuse of the part, right? So yes, the life cycle management is much broader in scope. Typically, if a company has never used a product data management or have never adopted any form of product data management, then we always suggest that you start there, right? If you don't have that as the foundation, having a life cycle management, from my own experience, I have seen, right, actually creates more confusion to a certain degree. And this is just from a very practical standpoint, because it is a big bang approach. And I've seen companies sort of abandon the project halfway, right? Why? Because it's just too confusing. Before I even have my product data correctly captured, it is being interpreted by my colleagues in marketing, for example. And if they interpret wrongly, they come back and, I have to make changes unnecessarily. These are some of the typical issues that are being faced. So yeah, how do you tell the between PDM and a PLM? PLM is just a broader scope, and yeah, if you decide, I mean, there's no hard rules to say, should I implement a PDM or a PLM? PLM is really just a concept. It's about how you manage the product throughout the entire life cycle. Whether you use a system or not, it happens to your company. PDM is something that we encourage people to do deliberately, purposefully, because it gives you the foundation.
Yep. All right. Yeah. Thank you, Kiet. Yep. So yeah, do we have any other questions that we can address from the floor? Someone? Okay. Yep. If there are no further questions, all right. Yeah. No worries. What you can do is you can also, of course, just write into us, or you can also just register for the next for our upcoming webinar from here as well, if you would like to know more. Yep. So yeah, as we mentioned, this one we are actually going to open it up for the priority for you guys, but also we have a limited number, so we'll be actually closing registration quite soon. Yeah. So yeah, feel free. Just take this chance to really register yourself or your colleagues first. All right. Yep. With that said, we would like to just thank all of you for joining our webinar session today. We hope it has really given you the insights and really solidify the concept of why product data management is the foundation that you should have to start on a smart manufacturing or smart industry journey in your company. All right. Yep. Yeah. So once again, stay safe. I hope everyone is doing well. Yeah. And yeah, we'll see you next week. All right. Thank you.
See you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Yep. Thank you, Kiet. Yeah. Bye.
Bye.